Good morning. I would like to welcome everyone to the Subcommittee on Federal Workforce, U.S. Postal Service, and Labor Policy. Our hearing today is, can a USPS-run health care plan survive its financial crisis? I will call the committee to order and begin with the tradition of Oversight Committee and its subcommittees with the mission statement of the Oversight Committee. We exist to secure two fundamental principles. First, Americans have a right to know that the money Washington takes from them is well spent. And second, Americans deserve an efficient, effective government that works for them. Our duty on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee is to protect these rights. Our solemn responsibility is to hold government accountable to taxpayers, because taxpayers have a right to know what they get from their government. We will work tirelessly in partnership with citizen watchdogs to deliver the facts to the American people and bring genuine reform to the Federal bureaucracy. This is the mission of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. I will begin with my opening statement. After we do some opening statements, and I may have to either suspend or turn the gavel over to run and do a vote over in Judiciary, but it's just be 3 to 5 minutes. So I respect everybody's time, and I'm grateful that you're here. I'll now recognize myself for an opening statement. A vibrant, healthy postal service is critical to our economy. Virtually everyone in the mailing industry, paper manufacturers, printers, catalog companies, and advertisers rely on the Postal Service. These jobs and many others are directly tied to a healthy postal service. The mailing industry as a whole accounts for nearly 8.7 million employees and generates $1 trillion in economic activity each year. Unfortunately, the United States Postal Service continues to inadequately respond to Americans' transition to digital communication and the related decline in first-class mail volume, in large part due to an oversized workforce whose labor costs account for approximately 80% of the Postal Service's operating expenses. As a result, today the Postal Service is facing the most significant financial challenge in its history and is on the brink of default, threatening the existence of hundreds of thousands of jobs all across America. Under the leadership of Postmaster General Donahoe, the Postal Service has made recent strides in improving the fiscal standing of the USPS. While I commend Mr. Donahoe for his commitment to implementing cost-cutting measures, the financial situation of the Postal Service remains untenable. In response to this fiscal crisis, the Postal Service recently presented its 5-year business plan to profitability. The USPS plan details a need to cut $22.5 billion in annual expenses by 2016 in order to keep pace with diminishing consumer demand for mail. The plan contains elements USPS can implement on its own and those that would require congressional approval. The centerpiece of this plan involves shifting USPS employees and their retirees from the Federal Employee Health Benefits Plan, FEHBP, to a new USPS-run health plan. Today's hearing will examine many of the aspects of the Postal Service's business plan, and I thank the witnesses here today for testifying. And on a personal note, I do want to thank Mr. Donahoe, who I have come to deal with over the last 18 months, and appreciate your efforts in trying to do all that you can to save the Post Office. When we met a couple of weeks ago, you indicated that you came from Pennsylvania and saw the occurrence of the Rust Belt, and that action there was not taken quick enough to save an industry. You're committed to saving this industry, and I, along with you, am committed to saving this industry and making sure that the Post Office is around for well over another 200 years, that it is running efficiently, effectively, at the service level that the American public deserve and expect. So I thank you for being here. And with that, I'll now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Cummings, for an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for calling this hearing. The Postal Service recently issued its 5-year plan of profitability, in which it proposes achieving $20 billion in savings by 2015. The Postal Service estimates that it can achieve $10 billion in cost savings without legislation. But it will require congressional action to realize the remaining $10 billion in savings. According to the Postal Service's plan, the bulk of those savings, $7 billion, would be realized if Congress authorized the Postal Service to take its employees and retirees out of the Federal Employees Health Benefit Plan and put them into its own health care plan. Currently, the FEHBP covers more than 9 million Federal employees and their families nationwide. Employees enrolled in FEHBP can choose from among 200 different health care plans. The Postal Service contends that it could manage employee health insurance better than the Federal Government as a whole. I want the Postal Service to succeed in the long run. I believe the Postal Service serves a unique and irreplaceable function in our society, that it is a necessary part of our nation's economic and social future. But I am quite skeptical that the Postal Service can or should manage its own health insurance system. I suspect that the achievable cost savings would come not from shrinking health care costs, but from shifting them onto employees. Postal employees would likely receive less coverage under a Postal Service plan, and they would pay a greater share of their health bills. Postal annuitants would also pay more, as they would be faced with paying an increasing share of their health care from their fixed retirement incomes. I look forward to the hearing from the Postmaster today about his proposal and about these concerns. I'm also concerned with regard to the issue of possibly raising rates. One of the things that we have seen is a decrease in first-class usage of the Postal Service. When we raise rates, which we may very well have to do, the question becomes, will we continue to lose business? I think that is a very important thing that I know Mr. Donahoe will address. And I also want to hear from him as to how he is going to grow the Postal Service business and what new authority he needs from Congress in order to make the Postal Service as relevant to America's future as it was to our past. And so, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your courtesy, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. When Mr. Lynch, the ranking member of the subcommittee, arrives, I will also allow him an opportunity to have an opening statement. With that, members may have 7 days to submit opening statements and extraneous material for the record. We will now welcome our first panel. Mr. Patrick Donahoe is Postmaster General and CEO of the United States Postal Service. Mr. Donahoe, as you are aware, pursuant to committee rules, all witnesses will be sworn in before they testify. If you don't mind, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Let the record reflect the witness answered in the affirmative. Thank you. As you know, your written testimony is before the committee. We like to limit it to 5 minutes. This is a crucial issue. I'm grateful for you being here. And with that, Mr. Donahoe, you're recognized for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, good morning. Thank you for scheduling this important hearing. I appreciate the opportunity to testify about the financial state of the Postal Service, about our 5-year plan to restore the Postal Service to profitability and long-term financial stability, and about our proposal to manage health care insurance for postal employees and retirees. America depends on a financially strong Postal Service. The Postal Service provides a vital national delivery platform that is part of the bedrock infrastructure of the American economy. It supports a $900 billion mailing industry that employs 7.5 million people. Every American resident and business depends on a regular, secure, and affordable delivery of mail and packages. Nevertheless, due to a rise in electronic bill payment and the economic recession that began in 2008, the Postal Service has been in a financial crisis. In response to a 25% decline in the use of first-class mail, the largest and most profitable part of our business, the Postal Service has aggressively cut costs and taken the responsible steps to return to profitability. We have generated cost savings of $10.5 billion since 2008 and have reduced the size of the workforce by 106,000 employees, and done so without layoffs or disruption in service. Indeed, our service levels have never been higher. Unfortunately, we cannot emerge from our financial crisis within the current legal framework. Absent a legislative remedy, the Postal Service will default this fiscal year on mandated prepayments to the Postal Service Retiree Health Benefit Fund. And as troubling as our current cash crisis is, these near-term shortfalls pale in comparison to our long-term financial challenges. Mr. Chairman, the Postal Service has put forth a comprehensive 5-year plan that provides a clear path towards financial stability. Our plan would enable the repayment of all existing debt and fully fund future health care obligations. Our plan will also position the Postal Service to better meet the changing mailing and shipping needs of the American public. The plan we have developed is a result of an exhaustive process of evaluating every appropriate option to reduce costs and retain or grow revenue. We have worked with Evercore Partners, one of the nation's leading restructuring firms, to validate our approach. At the core of the plan is a reduction in annual cost of $22.5 billion by the year 2016. Our plan calls for, and we are aggressively pursuing, the realignment of our mail processing, retail, and delivery operations. This realignment of the operational network is expected to yield more than $9 billion in annual cost reductions. Among the major legislative reforms we are recommending, the most significant includes enabling the Postal Service to provide employee and retiree health benefits independent of the Federal programs. This has the potential to produce approximately $7 billion in annual cost reductions and eliminate the need for any further scheduled pre-funding of retiree health benefits. If provided the authority to do so, we believe that we can provide our employees and retirees with the same or better health coverage for significantly less cost. Both our employees and retirees and the Postal Service would end up paying lower premiums. Mr. Chairman, without legislative reform that quickly enables meaningful operational changes and cost reductions, the Postal Service could incur annual losses as great as $21 billion by the year 2016. As a result, it is not inconceivable that the Postal Service may soon require appropriations greater than $20 billion a year. Fortunately, such an outcome is entirely avoidable. The Postal Service does not want to become a burden to the American taxpayer. The Postal Service is currently recording a loss of $25 million a day. If our plan is fully implemented, we could record a profit of $6 million per day by 2016 and be debt-free. We believe the plan we have proposed for the consideration of Congress is a strong one. Our plan would restore the Postal Service to profitability and financial stability. It would enable the Postal Service to meet its universal service obligations and continue to provide secure, reliable, and affordable service to the American public. We believe it is a responsible approach that is fair to our customers and fair to our employees, as well as fair to the American public which we serve. I look forward to discussing this with you today and be more than pleased to take any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Postmaster. With that, I'll recognize myself for a few minutes, 5 minutes for questioning. Mr. Donahoe, 150 million homes and businesses each day rely on the effectiveness and efficiency of the Postal Service to deliver their mail. 8.7 million employees are somehow or another indirectly or directly dependent upon the Postal Service for success. So today I think there are many that are hanging on your words as you give your testimony and answer the questions today. To go straight to one of the points that I think is most glaring at us is the costs of doing business for the Postal Service, and we know that over 80% of that cost is labor. With your plan for profitability that includes sustaining your own health care benefits, what have been your efforts and your results in dealing with the APWU, the letter carriers, and others in trying to sell this particular package?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me just say that I agree wholeheartedly with your concerns about the entire postal industry. This is a major issue for us. Sending the right message to this industry in terms of people who use us to present bills and manage their cash flow, as well as advertising and shipping their packages, is extremely important. So the quicker we act and get ourselves back on firm financial footing, the better for the entire industry. In regards with the unions, we have had a lot of, I think, very productive discussions, and we are still in the discussion phase with these proposals. The goal in the short term has been to get to the point where everybody understands what the proposals are, to listen and make sure that going forward everybody is on the same page. We are not at the point where we are in agreement yet, but we are in the point where we are discussing and getting a good knowledge base on these issues.
Let me ask you this. In getting to that point, is it a catalyst that your financial situation is such that you may run out of money soon?
I think that the unions realize the financial situation that we are in.
And when do you think, is there a risk of the Postal Service running out of money this year?
Here's where we are from a cash perspective. Our finances this year have been a little bit better than projected. We're about $600 million ahead of our finance plan right now. In October of this year, we will be required to make a payment of $1.3 billion to the Department of Labor. At that point, we'll be at about a $100 million in cash on hand. That's razor thin. Our operating cash for a day is $200 million a day. We will be able to go as long as the finances hold up this year, but in October of 2013, we would be in a cash crisis. Now, that also precludes us not making the pre-funding payments this year.
Okay, so right now, it doesn't look likely that you're going to be able to make the pre-funding payments for 2012.
No, we are not.
Which come due in November.
Yes.
And you're thinking then that if we stay on this course with inactivity of this Congress, then you're going to be out of cash to operate as the United States Postal Service by October of 2013?
We would be out of cash as it stands now. There are some options that we could take that we've taken before to conserve cash, like suspension of payment into the FERS fund that we're overfunded by $11 billion in. But I would strongly encourage Congress to move now. This is much more of an issue of a crisis of confidence about the postal industry than it is just our cash flow. The faster we can resolve this and then get focused moving forward on growing this industry.
A quick question about the reduction in workforce. I mean, I laud you and the Postal Service over the last few years in trying to respond to the decline in revenues because of first-class mail being not utilized as much. There has been a decrease in number of employees in the United States Postal Service. I recognize that. I think that's tremendous. But I also understand that we have got probably close to 150,000 employees that, by way of attrition, will be necessary in order to right-size the expenditure side of the Postal Service. Do you have any plans or suggestions for those that are currently eligible for retirement to incentivize retirement?
We think that by the year 2015, we need to be at about 400,000 career employees. Presently, there are about 155,000 people that can retire, with another 100,000 eligible over the course of the next 5 years. We do plan on issuing some incentives based on the fact that we make some changes in our operations. As we shrink the network, as we move from 6 to 5-day delivery, we would put some incentive money to move people along. It's critical for us to move the headcount down. But at the same time, we've got a lot of non-career people on the rolls that are less expensive to work with, but they're also younger people. And if we had to take them off the workforce, they would end up unemployed, and I don't want to do that.
One real quick question. I'm running out of time. The impact on Medicare under your health care plan. Could you expound on that real quickly?
The way that we're looking at the entire plan, what we'd like to be able to do is take full advantage of Medicare, just like any other organization. Right now, the Postal Service is the second largest contributor into the Medicare system. We think it's only fair that our employees and our retirees get to take advantage of Medicare and enjoy the savings of a wraparound plan that's more affordable for them, just like any other private corporation.
I appreciate that. My time is up, and I'll recognize the ranking member from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, for an opening statement, and then we'll move right into questions for you.
Why don't we go right into the questions? Thank you, Postmaster General. Good morning.
Morning.
You're making me nervous. You know, I'm just trying to figure out, and we've been dealing with FEHBP for a while now. There are some colossal inefficiencies in that whole system. So I could see where the opportunities for savings within that plan exist, and I have fought for some of those plans, especially with the pharmaceutical side. I think we're losing about $1 billion a year, honestly, on you know, the drug plans offered by the pharmacy benefit managers. We are not getting the value that we should be getting for the taxpayer or for the employee. We are being ripped off, I think. So, you know, I'm pretty frustrated because we haven't been able to move. I have legislation to sort of try to save that. So, on one hand, I do see some opportunities for savings, but you've got how many members have we got? 8 million in the wider system for Federal employees? Is that?
I think it's around 9 million total employees, retirees, and their families.
Okay, so you have, admittedly, or at least in theory, there is a certain amount of leverage that we have, having 9 million participants in the Federal Employee Health Benefit Plan. Now you're suggesting we're going to extract about 600,000 if you add survivors and whatnot by extracting the postal employees from that wider plan. And I'm just concerned about the lack of leverage, the lack of our ability to capitalize on any savings opportunities as a separate group. I also know that the mail handlers plan, which is very popular among postal employees, I think my mom and dad are in that, 2 of my sisters, all 55 of my cousins. I'm kidding. It's only about 17 of them. But no, there's a lot of popularity in that plan, and I'm just nervous that you're going to make it unaffordable, or people hate change,
Sure.
and especially when they've got something that works for them. It's stable, it's reliable, it's fairly efficient, and so. What happens to my folks that are in the mail handlers plan? Now, if you were suggesting that we're going to give people another opportunity here, and we're going to give them another plan, and there was an opt-in opportunity where if you ran a good plan, you ran a low-cost plan, you ran an effective plan, people would opt into that by their own volition, because I think there are a lot of people that, you could convince that you can do a better job. I think there are some people that are unhappy out there. If that were the case, I would have less problem with it. However, what you're suggesting here, I think, is we're going to pull our people out, and there's not a whole lot of choice there for the employees who would like to stay with the plan they have now. Could you address some of that?
Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to. The key thing from our perspective is to find the best plan for all of our employees and retirees. And what we've been doing over the course of the last year is working on that with consultant Aon Corporation and Hay Corporation to put together an excellent plan. So the first thing that I would assure you is whatever we would present to employees and retirees would be something they would be interested in. The idea is not to run it ourselves per se. What we would do would go out on the market and actually bid competitively for one of the large health providers like a Blue Cross or United Healthcare, one of those companies out there to run the plan. What we would offer in the plan would be a number of different options. Number one, you'd have a couple different tiers, a high value, a medium value, and a low value plan. A young person, 25 years old, they might pick the low value. We'd also give people options, single plus one, plus family. So that gives people some options there too. What's happened with your mom and dad, they have actually, if they're Medicare age yet, I don't know if they are, they've actually already done what we're proposing to do. They've measured the value of the mail handler plan and said, I'll sign up for Medicare A and B, and I can save money taking this mail handler plan. That's exactly what we propose. We'd like to have a plan for the current employees and then a wraparound plan for the Medicare eligible employees that gives them excellent value at a low cost. So they use Medicare as their primary provider and have this backup plan from a wraparound. That saves a lot of money, because today what happens is a person like me or other people who would be retiring may never change the health care, and the Postal Service and the retirees end up paying full health care plan for the rest of their lives, when in fact they could get much better value at that lower cost. So it's we've looked at this from a total top to bottom perspective, and making sure that the good value is there for the employees and retirees. Well,
look, I have enormous respect for you, and I also understand how difficult the environment is right now. But as a lawmaker, we need to drill down. I need to know every last detail about this, if this is something that you're serious about, and I think you are. And we need to talk to the employees and let them know that this is what's being suggested, and we need to be, poking at this thing and testing it, and whether or not this is really is going to help the taxpayer, and it's going to help the postal customer, and it's going to, obviously, this is really primarily going to impact postal employees and their families. So we'll keep talking. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced.
That's
but
fine.
we'll keep talking. Part of it is I need to know more. But thank you. I appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Now I'll recognize the Chairman of the full committee, the gentleman from California, Mr. Issa, for a round of questioning.
Thank you. And I want to thank you, Mr. Postmaster. The work you do is, I won't say it's thankless, but it's pretty close. And I know that your program is not being well received in some quarters, particularly, well, the real austerity is not being well received, but even the shift to using Medicare in a primary position is not being well received. And one of the not well received people could perhaps be me. I'm probably going to support your doing this, but let's have no illusions. You're just cost shifting. There's no real cost savings to the American people. The money, in fact, will be paid out of one hand in order to save out of another hand. Now, if you didn't have a projected $22.5 billion loss in just 3 years from now, if no change is made, we probably would say, no, thank you, but suck it up and keep it in the rate base. I think that the questions today that I have is, even if we do this, where with inaction is the rest of the savings going to come from? If we do this, how much more do we have to do? You've given us a program that makes an assumption that you'll be $60 billion in revenue in 2015. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you really believe you'll be at $60 billion without some change in the trajectory in 2015?
And I think the exact number is about 61 and change by 16. I think that based on the fact that that's a lot of our research has shown that's the direction that mail is going, predominantly driven by first class, as well as a CPI-based rate change. We think that we'll be right in that vicinity. We've been talking to customers, as I had mentioned here before. My biggest fear is not so much diversion, electronic diversion that's happening with bill payment. My biggest fear is the electronic diversion of bill presentment if we don't stabilize the finances of the Postal Service. We've got to get our finances stabilized. I think then that will keep bill presenters, first-class mail, in the mail. That's the best way for them to still communicate with their customers.
Well, I want to, because I'm a member of Congress and have extensive reporting, I want you to know that I'm doing my share. I do get electronic presentation, I guess if that's not the word, presentation. But I also get the paper copy so that I can absolutely be sure that I can do my reports properly. So I'm doing my share to make sure that's happening. But let's be honest, it would be a cold day in hell before I would voluntarily write a check and put it in the envelope again. My regular bills are all paid electronically, as probably, if not everyone on the dais now, in the near future will be. So again, it is a rosy scenario to be at $61 billion in revenue. If the continued decline in other forms, magazines and the like, if they continue to have more robust online services and less current, you're going to have challenges, aren't you?
Well, here's what we're looking at towards the future. We think that the Postal Service has 3 major products that will grow, either stay steady or grow going into the future. First class commercial mail bill presentment. Advertising, we know, can grow. Advertising through the mail is the most effective way you can do it. And the package business. We're growing the package business right now at a very brisk rate. Our final mile delivery is running 15% over last year, and that's over the year before.
Well, let me follow up on that, because it is true that that's one of the areas. And when I speak to many of your partners, most notably FedEx and UPS, you're critical to them. You're teamed. You're teamed on the back end. You're teamed on the final mile. Isn't the future of the Post Office an efficient, effective delivery system that often carries in greater amounts all of the above, meaning that you're the last mile in many, many, many cases, and that allows you to continue to be more efficient while it allows them to save money. Isn't that to a great extent where you're going to be?
That's where we're going to be, and that's where the country's going with the growth in e-commerce.
Now, today in rural areas, you're the last mile for newspapers in many cases, aren't you?
Yes.
And those newspapers choose to deliver on Saturdays, and you're planning for major cost savings to no longer deliver on Saturdays. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you find it odd that the vast majority of these newspapers do not want a rate increase, say they cannot tolerate a rate increase, but they want you to continue delivering on Saturday?
Well, right now we're still working through trying to get all stakeholders on the same page. But I think we can work with the newspaper industry too if they're interested on Saturday delivery. But to your point, we feel we have to reduce it at this point.
You have a very bold proposal that you offer Saturday delivery, but that it be self-paying. In other words, that to the extent that people still want a Saturday delivery, for example, pharmaceuticals, where for a smaller premium than FedEx or UPS, you can, in fact, still roll out that delivery. Does that system in some way translate to other areas? For example, is it possible to maintain, if you're given the flexibility to make it pay its own way, maintain, for example, those newspapers on Saturday in rural areas? You have rural letter carriers. Is there any way that's going to pencil out if you're given complete flexibility as long as it pays for itself?
What our proposal is for Saturday is to keep post offices open, post office boxes, run the network, and deliver packages with an extra fee. To your point, with the technology today with intelligent mail barcodes, we could actually deliver mail if a customer asks, again, making sure that we would charge the amount that would cover. So if a person absolutely needed delivery on Saturday of their letter mail and newspapers, I'm sure the flexibility is there for us to work that out.
So as Senator Lieberman and others in the Senate are reaching cloture on their bill, and we're preparing for a date on the floor, should we have a sensible manager's amendment that would include greater flexibility, or does the current bill give you the flexibility you need for a modernized Saturday delivery, in addition to what we all understand to be historic Saturday delivery ceasing?
I think any language that gives the Postal Service more flexibility is good, because with all the financial issues that we're facing, we could certainly use that flexibility for the customers. And I think working with our unions, we can get more flexibility in the workforce to make sure that we can deliver that mail.
Well, thank you. I note an esteemed former Chief Staff member here behind you. He knows how that should be written. I also see Mr. Clay, Sr. He certainly knows how the committee works. I won't name everybody, but we would look forward to that. Obviously, it's probably on our side of the Capitol that we're going to have to put additional language in. We'd like to work on making sure that language is flexible enough for your proactive proposals, which I think are every bit as important as the cost cutting.
Yes.
I thank the Chairman and yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Cummings, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to a moment to some things that Mr. Lynch was saying. When you're talking about, and I agree with everything he said, and I agree with his skeptical comments about this health care plan. When you think about something like health care, it's so very, very important and vital to people, particularly in today's world. And have you had discussions with the unions about the proposed health care plan?
Yes, we've been talking with the unions and the management associations for the better part of about 3 or 4 months. What we've been trying to do is go through a process so that everyone understands what's being proposed. So we talked about the original, how we would set it up, the Medicare requirements. We've actually mocked up some proposals based on taking a set of private industry plans, averaging them together and comparing some costs with what we have today, and we've discussed those.
So you're saying that they've had some input into your thinking and your planning there with regard to the program?
We've had discussions, but we've not come to an agreement. To your point, this is probably the most critical issue that people worry about their health care. So we don't want to push them. we want to try to work through so that we understand that we listen at the same time. Mr. Lynch mentioned the question about the mail handlers. One of the things that we've said to the unions is if you want to still maintain your plan, because some of them have a number of people in the rest of the Federal Government, we're fine with that.
One of the reasons why I mention the unions is because they have, in my estimation, bent over backwards and been very understanding, trying to work things out. I mean, it's just incredible the lengths that they've gone to try to work things through and understanding that sacrifices have to be made. And I would hate to see you coming up with these kinds of plans without having some type of input, because you're going to have to come back to them at some point anyway.
Oh,
and I think it's better to have people on board as you go along, and they feel as if they've been a part of the process, as opposed to going and trying to shove something down their throats.
I agree 100%. We want to make sure we work with the unions on this, and also the communication of the employees, and just as much so the communication with retirees, because there is a lot of concern, there's a lot of fear of the unknown out there, and it's just as important for us to listen to what the recommendations are and build that into the plan.
Now, let me go back to revenue. And packages rose some 8%.
Priority meal, yes.
Priority meal. And why is that? Why do you think that is?
Well,
because I think whenever we find a sweet spot, we need to kind of zero in on that to try to figure out how we increase it. Go ahead.
I agree 100%. Couple things on priority mail. Number one, priority mail is an excellent value. We have that's a flat rate box. If it fits, it ships.
Oh yeah, that commercial. I like that commercial.
There you go. And returns, the same thing. We've really priced these well so that you have small users, small business, home business. It's very easy for them, and large businesses to use priority mail. The other thing we've concentrated on this year is visibility, so good scanning the whole way through, and our people have done a tremendous job improving that. So I think that's where you're seeing a lot of value, and that's where you're seeing growth. The other area that we've seen tremendous growth is that last mile parcel select that our letter carriers and rural carriers deliver. That's growing at almost 15% a year. So we're very excited about packages, and that's why we'd like to get a resolution around some of these issues so we can get back and focus on growing advertising and marketing mail, packages, stabilizing first-class mail.
Now, you're familiar with the Senate bill, are you not?
Yes.
And I mean, what's your feelings about it? I mean, any concerns that you have? Because I think it's quite possible that may very well be the vehicle that we may end up sort of using to try to figure this out. That's my opinion, though.
Sure.
Mine only.
We think there's some very good points in the Senate bill. We've had a number of discussions with Senators Lieberman, Carper, Brown, and Collins. We think there's some very good points in there. There are some suggestions we've made. We've said to them the biggest concern is the length of time. If we can move up some of the proposals to match up more with our plan, we will get back to a profitable nature quickly and then be able to focus on growth. And
one last question. Now, there have been discussions, and you've said that maybe you would not have to close as many as 250, 200-something processing centers. Can you talk about that for a moment, please?
Sure. One of the questions that's come back from the Senate has been, is there, rather than moving to the full phase of the network consolidation, is there a halfway point to keep more overnight service for local businesses and customers? And we think that there is an opportunity. We've done some studies around there, and it would require us closing about half as many facilities as we proposed. In order to stay true to the finances, though, we have pitched the idea that we would like to raise the price of single-piece first-class mail eventually up to 50 cents. That's about $1 billion trade-off each way. Provide service, keep more of the network up, but we need the finances on the revenue side of the house to stay true to the numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. Now recognize the Vice Chairman of the Subcommittee, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Amash, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Donahoe. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
I have a few questions. When was the last year the Postal Service had a profit?
I think we had a profit in 2006, maybe 2007. I can't be 100% sure. One of those 2 years.
Okay, thanks. How much money did the Postal Service lose in the first quarter of 2012?
With our requirement to pre-fund about $3 billion and $300 million.
And how much do you expect to lose for the entire fiscal year?
Depending on how we finish the year, probably in the vicinity of about $14 billion. We're a little ahead of our revenues right now, and people have done a great job holding costs. The pre-funding for this year accounts for both this year and last, so that's $11 billion of those dollars.
Now, last year, Congress acted at the last second to give you some temporary relief from the pre-funding. What does the lack of certainty of whether or not you'll have to make your payment each year do for your plan for profitability and your overall business model?
We have to get that resolved. That's what we're proposing right now in terms of the health care proposals and the overall plan. But I will tell you, it's much larger than us. This is an industry issue. People, to give you an example, if you're worried about the Postal Service being able to deliver your bills and statements, and you're worried about your cash flow as a large company, you're going to start thinking about alternatives. The faster we get this resolved, the faster people don't have to worry about alternatives to the mail.
And that echoes nicely with my next question. In November 2011, you addressed the National Press Club, and according to the transcript, you said, quote, "You know that phrase, speed kills. Well, the lack of speed will kill the Postal Service. There's a stark choice. A more flexible business model that allows us to control costs quickly, or very large losses that will ultimately burden the taxpayer." End quote. If immediate action is needed to return the Postal Service to solvency, why did it decide to self-impose a 5-month moratorium on closures and consolidations of its facilities?
We were approached by members of the Senate, and they asked us, in order to keep some stability with the employees and the customers, if we would agree to wait to give them an opportunity to get legislation out and over to the House and get the legislation through the House and up to the President for signature. I didn't think that was an unreasonable ask. As we work through these processes to consolidate facilities, it's not going to happen all at once. The way we consolidate will be done in a very thoughtful and careful method, so we don't disrupt service. We are looking for the bottom line cost reductions, and we'll get those. But these consolidations will happen over the course of the next year.
So you were supportive of the Senate's request, then?
They asked me for that consideration. I had no issue with that.
Chairman Ross and Chairman Issa wrote a comprehensive postal reform bill last year that was passed by the subcommittee and the full Oversight Committee. It is full of cost-saving measures that will revitalize the Postal Service. What parts of H.R. 2309 does the Postal Service support?
We support the FERS refund. We support the ability to move and consolidate the network. We support the ability to move to consolidate from 6-day to 5-day delivery. Practically everything in the bill we are in support.
In your written testimony, you mentioned establishing a Postal Service-sponsored health care program represents the largest part of the plan for profitability savings, accounting for over $7 billion of annual savings. Does the Postal Service have the resources to maintain its own health care plan?
What we would do for a health care plan is what any other company does. You go out into the free market, you bid that, you find the best health care provider to act as pretty much an overall health administration firm, say a Blue Cross or United Healthcare. We would also expect to use HMOs or other health care to fill the gaps, because there are gaps out there, and that's the way that we would manage it. We'd go out through a regular competitive request for proposal, and once we were able to secure the health care, the provider would manage the plan for us.
And how long do you think it would take to implement such a plan?
We have had some discussions with health care companies to understand that, to actually test out our ideas and see if they are sound. We would have to go through a request for information on RFI to get more and then go out with an actual bid. We think that we would be able to have a health care plan ready by 2014.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Donahoe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. I now recognize the gentlelady from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton, for 5 minutes.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's an important hearing we're having. First, Mr. Donahoe, I just want to congratulate you and your union for what you have done so far. Never in the history of the Federal Government has a Federal agency downsized saved billions of dollars without a single layoff. And I must say that that could never have been done if there were not a union at a table. All hell would have broken loose if any private corporation or if the Federal Government had tried to make these billions of dollars in savings single-handedly as a management matter. I also note that the fact that the Postal Service is doing better seems to me to be a sign of recovery, or your virtual barometer about the economy itself. Now, if you look at the top line of what you're proposing, there's a part of it that's counterintuitive because of the notion adopted by every country in the world that the larger the pool, the less the cost of health care. I mean, that's what's before the Supreme Court now. That's what every country in the world does. It creates the largest pool it can. Every country in the world creates a pool of the nation itself. It's what we're trying to do with the Affordable Health Care Act. Moreover, I am sympathetic to the Postal Service in this respect. We ask you to do what we ask no Federal agency to do. It's mind-boggling that what we do, including providing services, and yet we want to treat you as a private corporation. We haven't made up our minds how to treat you. And so I look at what could motivate what might motivate this new idea of yours. And I want to ask you candidly if you would have felt compelled to put forward this proposal. If the post-retiree fund contribution the Postal Service must make today was eliminated or substantially reduced, if that were not the case, would you feel compelled to come forward here today?
One of the things, to your point, that we have looked at over a number of years is to actually own our own insurance plan. And your point of the size of the pool is critical. The size of the pool for the Postal Service would be about 1 million participants, retirees plus the
compared with how many in the FEHBP?
Compared within the FEHBP, it's a smaller pool. But if you took that and you said you went out into the private market and bid that, that would be the largest single health care group or pool out there. And that's the exact thought behind what we've been looking at. Our feeling is that not that we have any arguments with the FEHBP. I'm sure that everybody tries to do their best there. They run a pool of 200 different plans, 200 plus different plans, and there is no real way to get out and compete to get the best price. You know, we've had companies come in to talk to us about how they're saving in health care costs and providing better benefits through making the health care companies go out and compete and provide better pharmaceutical plans, et cetera, et cetera. And we look at that and say, geez, with 1 million people, we should be able to get some of those same benefits.
So the post-retiree contribution issue is not what motivates the proposal?
That is one of them. We have looked at this beforehand. However, with the retiree health benefit requirement, having our own health insurance company having our own health insurance does give us the opportunity to reduce those costs and manage Medicare at the same time. So what we're doing is looking at a number of things. You know, there's a potential that as we work through these changes, we won't be at the point where we are fully resolved with the health care, and we'll have to continue to work with the unions on that.
Mr. Donahue, you know, the first thing that any member of Congress will think about when a new proposal of this kind comes forward, and you've mentioned the stakeholders, is what the OMB, and you say this plan has been vetted, what the OMB, what the OPM, what your own Inspector General have said precisely about this plan?
Yes, we've asked them, to your point, please, you know, look at that, shoot holes, are we missing anything? So we've asked the IG to audit it, and they have, and they've told us it looks good. We've been to the OPM. I've been there with Mr. Berry on a couple of occasions, and actually have sent a number of our people back to look at it to make sure that any issues that were uncovered, that were not covered, we thoroughly vetted. I think to Mr. Lynch's point and Mr. Cummings' point, we need to continue with that. We need to continue to examine.
And what about the OMB?
We've talked to the OMB, but in terms of really digging in, probably not to the same level. We've had discussions.
Do you have anything in writing from those three?
I have from my IG, and I have asked Mr. Berry at the OPM to please provide back in writing what his thoughts are.
Well, Mr. Chairman, could I ask that what Mr. Donahue has in writing from the OMB, the
Sure.
Inspector General, and who else did you say?
We have to get something back from the OMB. We've asked for
the other two. You have something in writing. Could you submit that to the chairman so it could be?
Without objection.
Absolutely.
Please do so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Donahoe. I want to go back a little bit to the number of mail processing plants that we might be arriving at in terms of closure. I think some rethinking has been done from what was initially indicated.
Yes.
Where are we now in terms of that?
The original proposal was to move from approximately 487 down to around 200. We came back after we did our studies and proposed that we would go from 487 down to about 232.
Could I ask that in light of the potential job impact and the uncertainties in the minds of individuals who will be affected greatly in terms of where they might end up working, having the opportunity to work, do we expect to have that maybe close to finalization by the 15th of May? That's a date that we've been talking about some things happening.
We've been working through that with our employees. One of the things that we have continued to do, even though we've held the date for closings until after May 15th, was to continue to work with customers and employees. So we would know by then which employees would be affected. What we are trying to do is go person by person. That's how important this is, so that we can sit down with an employee and have a discussion. If they want to retire, if they want to take a different job, if they want to do something different in their career. Because as we've reduced headcount in the organization, we've always been very conscious to try to do it the right thing as a responsible employer.
Do we have any round numbers in terms of how much we're likely or would like to be able to save as a result of this process?
We think that the network reductions as proposed right now would save us about $2.5 billion. We also have actually taken about $400 million in revenue off of there based on feedback we've gotten from our customers. So the net would be about $2.1 billion.
Then let me shift over a little bit back to the line of questioning from Representative Norton. Did I glean that we're very comfortable from the responses that we have gotten from the stakeholders who vetted the proposed system that the Postal Service would run itself in terms of health benefits and
I think comfort would probably not be the right word. I think that our feeling is with our work with our IG, we've asked them as we've gone along, make sure we're doing this the right way. We don't want to put something out that's incorrect, so we've kept them abreast. The OPM, we are waiting back for answers in writing for them. We have been working with them and asking them again as we make these proposals, does it make sense? Or what we're saying, is this legal? Does this make sense from a health care perspective? So I think any time you get into a big change like this, there's no real comfort level. It's just trying to reassure and ask the questions to make sure we're doing this the right way.
Let me ask, what are we getting back from the unions as we interact with them around this proposed change?
I think that the unions, as we've worked to communicate and explain what we're thinking, there have been a number of questions come back. From some of the unions, they've said, geez, we have our own health care plan. What would happen with that? And that's something that has to be resolved. Of course, some of the other concerns have been, what happens in the long run if there's any problem with the Postal Service from a financial perspective. Our proposal also includes putting together a trustee group, like representatives of the unions, as well as management, and a third party like the Treasury or the OPM, somebody else in there that could oversee and make sure that all decisions were proper decisions going forward. And this has come about through all the discussions and looking at how other people have gone through those processes. But to your point, we have to be very careful and make sure everybody knows exactly what's on the table and what's being proposed.
Have you looked at or explored or thought about a postal-only plan within the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program?
We have talked to the OPM about that, and that's something we've said to them. If you could come back to us and say how managed within there we could get the same benefits, the same savings and flexibility, we would certainly be open to something like that.
And so we still have a number of options open.
Yes.
Relative to how we close the loop.
Yes.
On providing these benefits.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And for those who want to hang around, I'd like to go do another round with you.
Sure.
Specifically, I want to recognize myself for 5 minutes, but also ask you about rates. You've talked about increasing postal rates from 44 cents to 50 cents, and my concern is even though I was a lawyer by trade, I had an undergraduate degree in business, and some of the business models that we would deal with when I was in school would be that if nobody's buying your product, one of the last things you do is raise your rates. And my concern here is that the assumptions upon which you are basing your increase in revenues with an increase in rates, does that take into the cause and effect of those a declining user base of first-class postage?
This would be the way we would approach this. Our prices are broken out right now, competitive and market dominant.
Right.
For the most part, we would follow the pricing scheme that we have now with the CPI cap on all of our market dominant products. The only portion of mail that we would look at to increase the price would be specifically the single piece, the blue mailbox mail that you or I might use to send a card or mail a bill in. That is a volume that has continued to shrink,
right.
And as that shrunk, that's generated the recommendations of shrinking our network down. Now, there have been some suggestions that have been made to slow the shrinking down to some extent over the course of the next couple of years, not be as drastic. And our approach to that has been, if that's an option, if that's the will of the Congress, if that's where people want to go, that we would propose to increase just that single piece stamp rate to make up the difference of the savings that we'd lose.
But wouldn't logic and reason and quite frankly laws of economics dictate then that you might actually have an even further decline in revenues because of a lack of buyers, if you will, in the market? That
revenue is going whether we like it or not because of electronic diversion. That is also the least. It's kind of an interesting situation because the revenue of single piece is going away, and we project it to continue to drop based on bill payment online, electronic diversion. But there are other portions of that mail that are very inelastic. So we've looked out.
Inelastic, even if you went from 6 to 5 days, it would still be inelastic.
Yes, because it's convenient. Today with forever stamps, you can buy a book of forever stamps and pay 45 cents apiece and use those 5 years from now, and the postage rate might be 50 cents. So it's a good deal for people.
Real quickly on your charts there, because I want to go to the second part there, operational initiatives, and it looks as though you've formulated a $9 billion savings with those 3 particular areas. Could you identify those? You're talking about the reduction there, I guess, in the network and sortation and transportation.
Right.
If you could go over each one of those 3 that
Sure.
shows in the middle part there.
Here?
Right there, yes, sir.
Okay. What we've laid out here we've got 3 basic approaches. We've got legislative initiatives. That's the pre-funding result in 5-day. That's worth about $8.5 billion. The network itself, that's the facilities, retail post offices and in our delivery routes, we think that there's about $9 billion worth of savings there. And then the final is compensation and benefits. That's health care savings plus more flexibility with the union contract.
Specifically on the middle part there, when you say that the savings in network, that's through consolidation, is that correct?
That's a consolidation of the
How will that affect the geographic delivery of mail, if any, when those changes are made?
What we're proposing is changing service standards today from 1, 2, and 3 days to 2 and 3 days. What that would allow us to do is to consolidate substantially into a smaller number of plants, going from 487 down to the 232 we proposed. What that allows you to do is to use those buildings for 20 hours a day versus the 8 to 9 hours a day that we use now, and save substantial amount of money. A lot of overhead, a lot of maintenance costs. Those are that's the areas that we would be able to get.
And the retail would be the consolidation or closure.
Retail would be the consolidation and/or change in the cost of post offices. You know what.
We're talking about village post offices.
We're talking
concept.
village post. We have 4 proposals right now that we think are very viable for post offices. One is to consolidate small ones into larger ones, and that's, again, we want to be very careful with the customers. That's only a mile or two. We're not proposing for people to have to drive 25 miles. Right. Second is some type of a contract unit available at a local store that's open 7 days a week. Another is to serve people off of the rural routes, and we've had people actually ask us, as we've had these 3,700 community meetings, to move to rural delivery. But another solution is to match up the cost of the office with the revenue we bring in.
Right.
What we face right now is that we have thousands of offices that cost us on average $70,000 to operate and bring in somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. We think that there's a happy medium there. We're working with our postmaster associations. We'll also go back to the community to work on this too. Keep the flag flying, but we'll be able to do it at a lesser cost.
And one last one, because I'm out of time here. On the delivery, are you going there from door to curb? Is that what that's?
That does not include door to curb. That's improvements in what we call flat sequencing, and also in the way that we have the route structured. That's something that we're working with the.
So this doesn't include door to curb.
No.
And what is that estimated as annual savings?
Door to curb varies. There's savings, and there's also investment. And I would be more than happy to give you a paper on that. We've done a lot of research on that. That's also something I will tell you that of all the research that we've done from a customer satisfaction standpoint, that's the one thing that customers don't want changed. They don't want their mailbox changed. So we did not include that in there.
But isn't it true that only about 25% of postal customers really get door to door anymore?
It's about 30 million people. Right?
So yeah, okay.
So we want to be sure we don't have 30 million people really mad at us.
And I'll follow up with you on that. Thank you very much.
All right.
My time's expired. I now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Lynch from Massachusetts, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Postmaster General, in your proposal here, as Chairman Issa identified, there's a cost shift over to Medicare. How do you propose to do that in terms of just mechanically? Are you going to tell your postal employees, okay, now it's mandatory? You're going to ask Congress for the power to say to you that you can tell your postal employees the first dollar's got to be from Medicare. You got to go to there first. Are you going to have some type of option to have people go over? How's that going to work?
We would prefer the mandatory requirement for Medicare. We are the second largest payer into Medicare, the Postal Services, and we feel it balances the playing field with everybody else that uses Medicare. So we'd ask to require Medicare A, B, and D, and that we would provide, as part of the health care proposal, a very good value, low-cost option to provide the Medicare wraparound for B when our retirees sign up for that.
Okay, here's my problem. Right now, on the Medicare side, I'm seeing a lot of docs refusing Medicare. So let's just say I've got a postal employee, wants to go to their doc. Now you've got to go first. Now it's mandatory that they go Medicare.
Yes.
Their doc doesn't accept Medicare because the reimbursement rates are pathetically low. So under your plan, my person who couldn't go to their doctor, right? They'd have to go to some other doctor that accepts Medicare?
You know what? I don't know the answer. That's something I'd have to get back to you on. I'm not sure how that works. With the wraparound, and excuse me, I don't know the answer to that on Medicare A and B, that if a person could actually choose to use that wraparound to cover some of that. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Well, that's an important question, because ideally I would like the opportunity, if you're going to require a person in the first instance to go Medicare, if their doctor, their existing doctor, current doctor, does not accept Medicare, I'd like there to be some other option. Either they've gone first. If it's rejected, then they can still go to the same doctor. There was this promise out there with the Affordable Care Act that everyone would still be able to go to their own doctor.
Right.
That's not necessarily what's going on right now. But as this folds out over the coming years, I'm concerned about even people being able to go to their own hospital.
Yes.
Because I'm seeing some hospitals are getting very shaky, so they may not be in existence. So I'm concerned about that. The number you have up there for 5-day delivery shows a savings of $2.7 billion.
Yes.
And those, we've had some analysis on this that shows it to be half of that.
Yes.
And I'm just, does this properly account for the fact, okay, if you're not delivering on Saturday, and most people talk about the 5-day eliminating Saturday, do you factor in the drop-off in volume? Because if I'm mailing an important package on Thursday say Thursday, and I know it's not going to get there Friday because we have lower delivery standards, and it's not going to get there Saturday because the post office is closed, and it's not going to get there on Sunday because the post office is closed, and God forbid Monday's a holiday, there's going to be a drop-off in volume there. Have you factored that in fully because of the fact that you're not working Saturday?
We did market research on that, and I will tell you off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact number, but I can give you that number. We have done some market research, and that's why we picked Saturday, because it was by far the lowest volume day. One of the proposals that we also have working through the Saturday delivery, to your point, is on non-widely observed holidays that we follow now on Monday, we would deliver on Saturday. That's part of our proposal. So that closes that loop.
Okay, I don't have a lot. I only have about 30 seconds here. So let me just squeeze in this last one. I had an opportunity to meet with the folks from Pitney Bowes, and they're running a program in Denmark where they've got a virtual mailbox now. On your iPad or on your computer at home or on your laptop, you can pull up a virtual mailbox, and what they do there is, as the mail comes into the processing center, it takes a picture of your mail. And what you can do is you can click on the mail you want delivered, and you can click off on the mail you don't want delivered. So it eliminates what some people call junk mail. We call it direct mail.
Jobs.
I understand that. Yeah. We call it jobs, right. Now, that technology, are you looking at anything like that where folks could use this virtual mailbox to click off on mail? And I got 2 girls at home. I get a ton of this stuff. They probably like to get it, but I sure don't. And I'm just thinking about looking down the road. Have we factored that in here? If they're doing it in Denmark now, number one, are we looking at that? And have we factored that in? What's our plan? Well,
I want to make sure your daughters get their mail, because then they'll buy something and we'll deliver.
I bet you do. You're saving me money.
We are. Excuse me. Right now, we are looking at digital. In fact, we are in the process of establishing a group to take the lead on that. And we think there's big opportunities in the digital world from a digital transmission, because we provide the safety and security of first-class mail. We think that there's some opportunities to transition that into the digital world. But we also think that there's plenty of opportunities to grow revenue within the current products that we have now, employing some of those same technologies. So plenty to report out on that. We'd like the opportunity to cover more of these digital areas. The one thing that we will need from a legislative standpoint is just some clarity around the fact that we can get into those areas. That's part of the non-postal that we're looking for.
Okay. Just one yes or no question, and I know I'm abusing my time. I understand that, and I appreciate your patience with me. Have you been talking with Kevin Talley from the rural carriers and Jennifer Warburton from the National Association of Letter Carriers on this five-day thing and where the numbers might be on this?
I talked to Fred Rolando
Okay,
and to Jeanette,
Okay.
but I don't know the other people.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Cummings from Maryland, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Donohoe, what went into the development of this plan? I mean, how did you come about it? And how did you, you're dealing with some pretty exact numbers and projections, and I'm just wondering, trying to get to the integrity of the plan.
Sure. Here's how we approach this. To Ms. Norton's point earlier, facing the problems that we face with the retiree health benefit payment, we rather than throwing our hands up and saying we can't do anything about it, we started to look at what actually made up the requirements of that retiree health benefits, and there were a number of things that came up. Number one was the requirements for health care and for employees who weren't in the Medicare plan. There were some accounting issues, and of course the cost of FEHBP plans that don't give you the value of the wraparound. So as we have historically looked at having our own health care plan. This goes back, I think we made some original studies right after the 2000-2001 time frame. So we went back and sat down with a couple of groups, Aon Corporation and the Hay Group, two outside firms who were expert in this area, and we actually assembled a health care plan based on what we thought one would look like in the size and scope of organization the size of the Postal Service. We designed it based on what other companies are doing today, looking for the number of value levels plus a number of different groups, the single payer, single plus one family. The other thing we did was made sure that we had pharmaceutical coverage in that too. So we sat down and pretty much built a health care proposal based off of all this information, and that's where we are right now. Taking that then and then comparing that to what we spend currently in FEHBP, and then the same way what we are doing in terms of Medicare today, and that's where we've arrived at the point that we're at today. So we've done a lot of studies on this to the point we made before. We've talked to the OPM, the OMB, we've had our IG, we've had people come in from the outside, all the big health care providers, not on RFIs, but for discussion to understand how we can manage health care, how you can manage pharmaceuticals. A lot of work's been done.
And what would the employee have to give up anything if going into your program?
I think that, and I can provide you all the detail. We've gone through and stratified every plan that every employee is in. I would say for the most part, probably 95% of our employees would benefit from a better plan at a better cost. There are people who choose some very, very low value plans. Excuse me. They probably have to pay a little bit more, but I can provide you all that data.
And I take it that when you have a plan where you have the 4 categories, I think it is 4?
Yes.
As opposed to 2?
Yes.
That allows for more precise, I guess, precise measurement as to what it would cost the insurance company. Is that right? And therefore, hopefully, a tailoring of the premium, too.
It gives you a better choice in terms of what you actually offer, but I'll get you this information, too. I think that it actually ends up costing us a little bit more to give that actual flexibility, but I can provide you with that information. We think it's fair that a person shouldn't have to buy family if there's only 2 of them. That's,
Sure.
But I think that as you shake all the numbers out, that's something that would fall back as more expensive for the Postal Service, but it's fair for the employees.
Now, someone asked you, I think it may have been the chairman of the subcommittee, asked you whether you were comfortable with the House bill, the one that we've developed so far, and you said just about everything.
Yes.
Are you comfortable with the control board type system that's in there?
That's the one area that I will tell you that I'm not very comfortable with. No, and only it's kind of a philosophical thing. I felt very strongly about the fact that as a group of stakeholders, being the unions and the mailers, we should be able to figure out how to get these issues resolved, working with Congress, working with the administration, getting the right laws passed so that we don't have to go to a control board type of environment. What we've got proposed in this plan, if we can get that through and everybody have a little bit of skin in the game, we can get the Postal Service back on good, firm financial footing, clear that issue up with the mailers that were, quote unquote, going out of business, and really be strong for the next decades to come.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cumming. Now recognize the Vice Chairman of the Subcommittee, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Amash, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks again, Mr. Donahoe. In a March 2010 USPS action plan, USPS stated diversification into non-postal activities such as logistics, banking, and consumer goods would not be viable due to high operating costs and relatively light customer traffic in post offices. Is this still your opinion?
Yes.
And could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Here's the thing. The way we look at it is this: the Postal Service has a tremendously strong core business, and we think that looking out into the future, commercial first-class mail, advertising mail, and packages provides us big opportunities to grow the business itself, as well as make some additional money on new services. So our focus should be on being the best at what we do the best right now. When you look at things like banking, there's banks on every corner. When you look at cell phones, AT&T is trying to merge with T-Mobile because they can't make any money independently. Even if you study what the foreign posts do, if you look at what Germany does today, Germany makes their profits off of the mail. Of course, they charge 85 cents for a stamp to deliver the size of a territory like Ohio and Pennsylvania. But, you know, they don't make money on logistics, and it would be foolish for us, especially in the situation we are, to take our eye off the ball and get into something we're not good at.
Yeah, and I have a slide up here which I think really emphasizes this point. This is from 2009. It shows a $7.8 billion shortfall. In order to make up that sort of shortfall, you need to run revenues of almost $150 billion. And I mean, to show you how big a deal that is, that would equate to creating 13 Fortune 500 companies. It would be more than twice the combined revenue of FedEx and UPS. It would be equal to capturing 5% market share of the total U.S. savings market, and it would be equivalent to building an e-commerce business 8 times the size of Amazon.com. So do you have any comments on this?
Well, I agree with that. I mean, it's better for the Postal Service to focus on the core mission. We have people that do an excellent job every day. We're out there. We've got the best network in the world, the house-to-house, business-to-business network. And with the growth in e-commerce that we can see coming up, we think there's definitely opportunities for us to grow that business.
Thank you. And I have a few questions about the health care plan.
Sure.
Currently, the taxpayer provides a backstop for postal employee retiree health care benefits. Would you expect the backstop to continue if USPS leaves FEHB?
Backstop meaning that if we left FEHBP and went and the Postal Service was out of business, that there would be no.
If you were running the plan yourself.
Right. Here's the way we look at it. First of all, by implementing a plan like we are projecting now, we do not plan on going out of business. We plan on getting stronger and being strong going out into the future. That's the goal right there. Secondly, by working through how we actually set up the health care plan and how we manage the retirees and how we manage the pre-funding money that's already in there, $45 billion, we think that will be enough to cover retiree health benefits going out into the future. The key critical thing for us, though, is, again, a good, viable, financially strong Postal Service going out into the future.
And would the premiums and benefits of a USPS-run health care plan be subject to collective bargaining?
They could be. We've not really spent a lot of time on that. but it would be an area that would be open for collective bargaining. That's pretty much the way that the rest of American business does it today. Currently, the legislative issues cover retiree benefits and the retirement portion of the FEHBP. I think many years ago there was actually some collective bargaining done around benefits, and of course we consider that going out into the future.
And how would USPS prefer to have its a separate health plan funded?
We would fund it just like we do now. It's part of the business of running the organization. There's no government money coming our way. We want to be self-sufficient, like I said in my opening statement, and that's exactly how we'd fund this.
And would you immediately want to draw on the current retiree health benefits fund managed by OPM? There's
a couple different options on that. We would have to sit down and walk through those with you. I think that as you go out, there will be a need to start to use those funds probably in 3 or 4 years from now, but I don't know that we'd be doing anything in the next couple of years. But I'd like to sit down with you. We've got some people that know that stuff a lot better than me. I'd be more than happy to cover that.
Thanks for your time. I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Motion. I recognize the gentlelady from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got 2 questions. I want to get into my 5 minutes. Mr. Donahue, are you aware of the experience of agencies that have done exactly what you propose to do, like the FDIC, have tried to do their own health care plan only to come right back a couple of years later?
I'm familiar with that. I understand that some of those changes were due to accounting changes, and the FDIC decided they.
What do you mean by that?
The pre-funding requirements. From what I understand, that when the FDIC moved off to have their own health care plan, once they were faced with law changes that required pre-funding, they chose to move back with the FEHBP.
Because the Federal Government required pre-funding in their plan?
Yes, and it was smarter for them to move back in.
Yeah. They didn't have pre-funding before because they were a Federal agency,
right.
And these Federal agencies don't have to pre-fund, right. Which is, of course, goes back to my original question to you: would you be here?
Yes.
If you did not have that, if you did not have that requirement? And Mr. Donahoe, I'm not quite sure you would. There's every private employer who moves first to insurance, because we're the only country where employers pay for insurance, and it's, of course, the biggest. It's the biggest part of what they have to take care of, even with the tax issue for them, which you don't even have.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question. I think the record would benefit from knowing how you are proceeding on the closings. We had a number of closings here. Then some of them were taken off, apparently by the Postal Service. How do you decide what post offices will be closed? I recognize they've been suspended after the Senate intervened, but I assume they're going to resume.
Here's the way we would approach that. Post offices and stations and branches in, say, a city like Washington. We think there are a number of options. Number one, consolidation, which we're doing in some cases where we just don't have the foot traffic in a place. We would consolidate one into the other, maintain the zip code so customers would have no ill effects of changing an address. In more rural areas, we're looking to do some contracting with local stores that are open 24/7. In many cases, our contract with them keeps the lights on in a place like that, and it's also convenient for customers. One of the other considerations in rural areas is what's called extension of rural delivery, so that we deliver to a person's house rather than having them come to the post office. But I think the key thing going forward, and this is something we've been working with our postmaster associations on, and that is being able to provide a better matchup of costs and revenues for small post offices going forward. Maybe instead of opening for 8 hours a day, we'd be open for 6 hours a day. That matches the revenues up with the cost, and it allows us to keep the lights on, the flag up there for customers to have access to the Postal Service.
Shorter hours?
In some cases,
yeah.
Yes.
Well, actually, your notion of partnering with a commercial establishment was part of an amendment I introduced. I couldn't imagine why this wouldn't have passed. It would help the private sector.
Sure.
It would help the Postal Service. But believe it or not, that amendment did not pass, and it shows we're not looking always for win-wins. But I have to tell you, in my own district, I got some information back that intrigued me, that said that there was only, at a post office that was due to be shut, perhaps because of your other troubles, there was only one postal clerk there. And people, this was a neighborhood which people regard as very busy, very much in need of postal service. People would walk in, and they would see these humongous lines with only one little person there, and they just walk out again. That's why I need to know, what are your criteria for when your own downsizing may have been inadvertently chasing people away from the Postal Service?
That is a concern. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is customer service, and long lines is something we want to avoid. And years ago, when I worked in Washington, D.C., that was one of my major impetus, was to work better with customers, make sure that we provided great service. Offline, you can tell me what office that was, and I'll make sure that we take care of that. But one of the things we're looking at is making sure that not only we have access to post offices, we're looking at putting more self-service in, so that people have the opportunity to either go to the line or just buy stamps. How much are you going to save?
How much are you going to save if you were to close every post office that's on your list? And I recognize that there's an appeal process. So if you're going to have savings, that appeal process is going to continue operative, isn't it?
What we think is,
and if so, what would be the savings in the end, assuming that you prevailed in every appeal?
We think that as we balance up the hours and the revenues, we'll probably save about $500 million. And that's keeping the majority of places open. It's just trying to make sure that we have the right number of resources there with the revenue that comes in the door.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Donahoe, as we experience this era of declining mail volume, do you think that the current cap is reflective of your actual cost, or should maybe the PRC look at possibly reconfiguring the cap?
Well, the cap, there's a good side and a bad side with the cap. The cap, from a Postal Service perspective, puts some discipline into the costs of the system and makes us work hard to stay efficient, which is a good thing. From a customer perspective, it provides a lot of predictability, which is a very good thing, and helps us keep people in the mail. To the discussion that we had earlier, we think that there is some ability for the Postal Service to raise single-piece mail prices over the course of the next couple of years. Right now, by law, single-piece and commercial mail is linked. We would like, by law, that to be changed and have some flexibility. The fact that we have forever stamps out there, customers can buy them and use them forever, that gives them a little bit of a discount that way. But it would certainly help us generate a little bit of money with what we think, even at 45 cents, is a pretty good bargain.
In his last round of questioning, Chairman Ross raised the issue of rates. Let me ask, what do you see, or what do you think might be in store for nonprofit or not-for-profit mailers under the proposals that we're looking at?
The nonprofit revenues continue, from a standpoint of volume, continue to be strong in the organization. We have not come out from a Postal Service perspective and asked to change that. I know there's been some discussion about increasing the not-for-profit rates. Those people depend on the mail. They'll tell you that even though they advertise a lot online, I don't think they get many donations online. The majority of the donations that come into the not-for-profit come through the mail. And the good thing about those, a lot of those donations are mailed back with a 45-cent stamp, which is good for us.
I have no further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Mr. Donahoe, I appreciate you being here today. I am looking forward to continuing to work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and with you in making sure we do what is necessary to preserve this age-old institution and make sure it's run efficiently and effectively. Thank you for your time, and I'll conclude this first panel.
Thank you.
We'll now take a few minutes and get ready for our second panel for Mr. Francis.